Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I am delighted to be joined by JP Mason. There is loads to talk about now, JP, now that we're in that part of the transfer window where things are heating up, players are leaving, loads and loads of players are going to be linked between now and the moment that the window closes. And of course, Adam Idah is in the building, but also ticket allocations. This one's been rumbling on for ages. I'm going to ask you this one, JP, because you are a Celtic fan who travels home and away. You try and get in as many European games as possible. And things have changed in the near past in relation to the Glasgow Derby and allocations, and obviously it rumbles on. I see no end to this. I think we're in a situation where Celtic have been dragged into it. Let's not revise history. Celtic have been dragged into this situation. We've done everything we can in our power in terms of making the place safe for a reduced allocation. And the other team, Rangers, have not been able to keep up with that kind of demand in that agreement. Celtic have got no choice in this matter, JP. And I think it's about time we kept, going over that and highlighting that. Because if you don't, in the media, it's a Celtic and Rangers problem when actually it isn't, is it?
Just like the Hibs reduction of our ticket allocation on Sunday, that was a Celtic and Rangers problem, or a fan behaviour problem amongst the Scottish football clubs. But yeah, Hearts are still going to get their full allocation, but we don't get ours. And then you're sitting there in the stand on Sunday looking to your right, and there's seats covered up, like just for no reason. It's not as if it was
You're there, right? You've been charged a pretty penny for your ticket, JP. Now, again, you and I have discussed this before, and at least one club's come out and said this makes good business sense. I think it was St Mirren, and they produced some figures to say that in actual fact we can sell more season tickets if we do this. But all I see is empty seats. I can't see any business sense. If a club had so much demand from the home set of supporters, JP, that they thought, you know what, we're just going to squeeze you and give them all the tickets to the home fans. But I would understand that. But that's not what's happening, is it?
No, that's definitely not what happened. Because I mean, to be fair to Hibs, they didn't have a horrendous crowd on Sunday. Rather, I mean, it was a respectable crowd. You'd still hope that it would be full for the first home game of the season, but perhaps disenchantment with what's going on there might have played a part in it. I don't know. Maybe the fact that it was also a sunny day, people might have changed their mind or whatever. But to deny away supporters the opportunity to watch that game purely just to, I don't know what the argument really is. I mean, Celtic fans, if we're going to cause any bother, what makes the fans that were there not cause bother that the ones that weren't there could? Do you know what I mean? It's not as if they were like selectively removing. There we go.
He's early today. Yeah.
Got the window open as well because it's very muggy today. Not that I like to talk about the weather too much, but I don't understand why that would be okay. Well, we'll let these few thousand Celtic fans in, but we'll not let these 800 or however many other in. Because how do you decipher who's going to cause problems? There was no problems at all on Sunday, and in actual fact, I have to commend Hibs on their addressing of whatever the issues were for folk getting into Easter Road. I know that there was problems the last time that I was there. I just missed some sort of hullabaloo, for want of a better word, because my mate's one of the stewards and he'd said, "Oh, you've just missed a bit of nonsense." So I think they've addressed that because it was very, very easy for me and Melly to get in on Sunday, just to walk straight in. There was no issues. So credit to them on that, but definitely no credit given on the reduction of seats when it's reducing the amount of money that they're able to get in. I mean, they're currently trying to sign that guy for Dundee, McCowan, and obviously they've had a bid rejected. The money that they could have made on Sunday, I'm not saying it would have paid for the transfer, but it would have contributed to that transfer that they're trying to get. I think Dundee are quite right that they want to dig their heels in and get more money, as is any club, right, and they're within the rights to do that. And yeah, I mean, that money, I mean, it'll happen again when Rangers come to Easter Road. They'll reduce it for them as well, and that's further money that they're sort of doing themselves out of. But that's that. But to get back to the Rangers thing, I mean, I've now not been to Ibrox since 2018. 6 years since I've been to an away game, a fixture that, by and large, throughout my life, I've more often than not been able to get a ticket for when we had that full stand.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you couldn't get one, and you just sort of dealt with it and had to watch it in a pub or whatever. And it's never that enjoyable watching it in a pub. It's not been enjoyable watching it in pubs that much either. Even though we have won on several occasions since that reduction in tickets, or completely, getting rid of our allocation completely. But you always want to be there for those moments as a supporter. And in this situation, with their uncertainty over where they're going to be playing, I guess that played into the whole decision-making process and why we've not given them tickets for Celtic Park, because there can't be a guarantee that we will get either an allocation at Ibrox if the game gets played at Ibrox, or how's it going to work at Hampden? How many tickets do we get at Hampden?
I just see this. There's two sides to this. Every time we talk about it, JP, I see a lot of other fans of other Scottish clubs coming into the comments in relation to ticket allocations. They call us entitled, like we're demanding this, we're demanding that. What we're talking about is how it's more or less always been in terms of an allocation, an away allocation for Celtic going to the likes of Easter Road, or going to Fir Park or New Love Street or wherever we're going. And I think you can separate that argument with the Derby argument, because that is a different set of circumstances. Rangers Football Club, they were the team who reduced the allocation. For a number of years, we got the Broomloan stand, right, for a number of years. And actually, the last time I had a ticket, going back to your point, was the March, just as COVID was kicking in and the league was suspended at that point. So I had a ticket for that. I've still got it somewhere. Never ever got my refund. I think it was 53 quid or something. Maybe I should ask them for my money back at Rangers. But anyway, they probably wouldn't pay. Imagine that was the one that tipped them over. I'm going to dig that ticket out. Right, so we know that they reduced the allocation. And, there's a couple of trains of thought in relation to why they did it. I think that there's a romanticism around, they couldn't stand us celebrating like we owned the stadium time and time again after another hammering. But I also think that it was a financial decision, JP. I think that they wanted to sell the maximum amount of season tickets and squeeze us into a wee corner. And that's what started the ball rolling. And we should never let anyone forget that was the reason that Celtic then followed suit and reduced our allocation. If there's an agreement in place between two clubs whereby, right, this is the safety measures we need to put in place to make sure your fans are safe at our stadium with the reduced allocation, and vice versa, you need to do the same. And if Celtic stick to their side of the bargain and Rangers don't, for whatever reason, be that the problems at Ibrox, the fact that they're now playing at a temporary stadium, or financial issues, which we know will exist somewhere down the line, it's no Celtic's problem. And I think that's why on the tagline, it's my opinion. Let us know in the comments if you agree or disagree. It's all about that. It's all about the debate. I think Celtic have been spot on with the way we've dealt with this, JP. And again, I know I'm biased. I've got the green tinted specs on. Of course I do. But I cannot see one bit of that process where I can criticise the Celtic board or the decision making. Because if I could, and I have done in the past with regards to recruitment, etc., then I would say they're wrong there. I don't think we have been all along the way.
But is it not the case that Celtic have spent something like a 6-figure sum on the adjusting that section of the ground to accommodate a support of the size of all guns blazing the day?
All the cops. We had a wee bit of a Manchester moment yesterday, which we'll come back to. Terry Christian's over your shoulder.
He is. What a guy! What a guy! No, going back to the adjustments that Celtic have spent money on. I mean, that obviously shows that we were committed to the agreement that was in place, and then that agreement quickly changes when the team we're supposed to be playing in the corresponding fixture aren't playing at the stadium that it was agreed that we would be visiting. So I don't know what the accommodation would be like for us at Hampden for a game if they're still there in January. Which, let's face it, given some of the leaked videos that have been appearing in the last couple of days,
oh my word,
is potentially going to be the case. I mean, I'm sure they wouldn't like to stare down that particular truth, but
one of them I seen was quite apocalyptic. You know what I mean? It was like one of the movies you watch, JP, where a once grand sculpture or a piece of architecture is now in ruin, and you walk through it, and there's the Rangers crest under a pile of rubble. Did you see that one?
Yeah.
And I was thinking, all right, they're well up to date with regards to their objectives and all this kind of stuff. That's going to run on and on and on.
Well, at least we know from the Champions League qualifier the other night that we've got a good chance of a decent allocation given all the empty seats. So that would be, could we take 10,000 to Hampden?
Yeah, we'll get To me, I always go back to this, JP, because I think I've mentioned it a number of times on the show that my first season ticket was the Hampden season 94-95. I'd been going obviously since 87, and thinking when I was first introduced that everything was rosy in the garden at Celtic. The strips were brilliant. McAvenny was brilliant. McStay was the maestro. We won the double. Everything was a fairy tale. And then we obviously limped on season after season after that. But the Hampden season, the crowds weren't fantastic. And that was the first season that Celtic really had pushed the sale of season tickets. So we had a reason for it, right? It was like, if you speak to Jim Orr had done all the kind of background work on Celtic's finances leading up to the Save Our Celts movement, which was a precursor to Celts for Change. And he spoke about a situation where I think Celtic had in the region of 8,000 season tickets. That was the norm. 8,000 season ticket. It wasn't a big thing. Celtic Football Club preferred it if you just rocked up, paid the money at the gate, came in. And I think a big part of that, JP, was, quite frankly, they could say that a 60,000 crowd was 38,000. I mean, you look at some of these videos, Celtic v Aberdeen, mobbed. You look at the attendance, 38,000. You know, Dundee United, Hearts, big crowds, and of course Rangers in the European games. So if you've got a season ticket, everything's allocated, everything's in the books, and you can't pretend that we've got Fergus McCann came in and introduced that. So I think there's a reason there for our crowds to be quite sparse for a lot of the games at Hampden. You look at this scenario, you've got a situation where we can only kind of base it on what we've seen, but fans are already not enjoying and not getting behind whatever is happening over the city. But in terms of our game with them, you know, I'm quick to criticise the board, JP, and what I'm trying to say here is I think they've played a blinder, and I agree with what they're doing at the moment, the Celtic board.
Well, they're just basically protecting our interests as a support. I mean, the goalposts have changed literally to a different stadium, so you can't really argue with like the things that have changed based on the agreement that was in place previously. So, I mean, I'm not in any way up in arms about it. I'm quite relaxed about it. It's another game in a couple of weeks' time where we have a full house of Celtic supporters. Won't be something that they would be relishing at this point in time, given the state of play with their team and whatnot. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I kind of wrote that game off as last season as being like, oh, this is the last one that'll ever happen like this. But we're getting to enjoy another one before things invariably change again.
Yeah, and there's two sides of that as well. You brought up with the allocation being as it was, JP, and there's an element of the fact that I go into that game at Ibrox and Broomloan, and I enjoyed my experiences being part of that crowd behind the goals, not always getting the right result. But I'm getting to the point now where I'm thinking, and Joe Hamilton brings it up here, we'll never, ever get back to that. That will never be the status quo. It's like, let's call it quits with the nonsense. No away fans for any Glasgow Derby in the future. Now, I think in the past, Celtic, as a football club, would have looked at their brand, you know, this joint brand, and let's not pretend it didn't exist, because it did. Pre-2012, there was a brand. It was co-owned by both clubs, and it was called the Old Firm. And they used to do broadcasting deals. They used to do sponsorship deals. And it was a joint alliance, if you like Old Firm Friends, which is obviously where the term came from. That no longer exists. And we're never going to go back to that. And I think with the ticket allocations, I'm in Joe's camp with this one. Let us know in the comment section what your thoughts are. Do you miss those days in the Broomloan? Do you wish for them to return? And if they do, would you give Rangers a higher allocation? Or do you think the Celtic board have played a blinder on this one? And we can actually give them a wee bit of praise. JP, we mentioned before, as I say, Happy Mondays. That was the song that played, wasn't it, as we walked out of the venue yesterday? You and I were in Edinburgh. You and I. Now, Edinburgh's not far away from where I live. I'm 25 minutes drive. Yet, when it comes to the Fringe, I don't go to many of these things. And I know that it's on your doorstep. People travel from all over the world, JP, entertainment for a month and all this kind of stuff. I don't tend to go to these things, right? I don't know why. I don't even look at the programme to see who's on. I did maybe 20 years ago, but not now. But yesterday, you and I did. And we went to see Terry Christian, but there was a whole reason behind it. Give us a wee breakdown of your day. The bits that we can discuss, of course.
Well, I mean, there was a few left field moments, but that was neither of our doing nor Terry Christian's. It was an amazing afternoon, and for me personally, to meet Terry Christian, never mind to interview him or be part of an interview with you and Tommy, to speak to him. I mean, the word for me when I was growing up was an absolute musical and sort of cultural Bible that I watched every single Friday night. I was always keen to see what bands they had on, because they always seemed to be kind of on the money with bands that they chose to come on. And then we found out why yesterday, because Terry Christian was himself involved in the process, and then Joe Wiley as well latterly was involved in the booking process as well. Someone else who's always had our finger on the pulse, being one of the evening session hosts with Steve Lamack on Radio 1. Mm-hmm. We sat in a very nice sunny terrace and interviewed Terry Christian, talking to him about his life, his show behind us, and his love of Manchester United, his affection for Celtic, the sort of bond between the two clubs, if you want to call it that. Some people will say that doesn't exist. Some people will give you detailed proof of how it exists. Other people sort of point to the Celtic-Liverpool connection, of which there is undoubted a connection there, connection with Celtic and Everton as well. But yeah, it was an amazing, surreal experience to be sitting next to someone that you watched interview people like Oliver Reed. I didn't know who Oliver Reed was until he was on the Word, and then I'm like, this mad guy with a moustache and glasses. And
it was one of the curly moustaches at that time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was all curled up, yeah.
Yeah, and then I found myself in Malta a few years ago. Well, it's quite a few years ago now. With the Twilight Sad, and we got wind that the pub, the last pub that Oliver Reed ever drank in was in Malta, because he was there filming Gladiator. And he promised Ridley Scott, the director, that he wasn't going to get back on the booze, and unfortunately some guy challenged him to, I think it was an Irish guy, challenged him to a drinking competition in this bar in Malta, and he did it, and then he was successful in the drinking competition, but unfortunately unsuccessful in surviving it. So it was I think it's called the pub, and it's just a wee pub down a lane in Malta. It's an innocuous pub, but they've got a framed picture of Oliver Reed in the pub, which is a little bit dark, but I suppose at least they're acknowledging, what happened and stuff. So, but he interviewed many other people. Whitney Houston as well. I mean, I didn't even know that had happened until he told us yesterday that Whitney.
Remember Snoop Dogg?
Snoop Dogg guy.
Remember and then Emu attacked him.
Yeah, somebody put it on Twitter last night, replied to one of the kids last night. And then you've got the Sean Ryder incident that he told us about as well, which we need to wait until Friday. Did he mention it in the interview? Or did
he did. He did. And then he told the story, because the thing is, JP, you're talking about a guy who hasn't what I would call an obvious link to Celtic. And people might think, why are a Celtic state of mind interviewing Terry Christian? Well, because he has a Celtic state of mind. And, I remember reading his book when it came out, and I picked up another copy yesterday. And he spoke about coming up, going to the Celtic game. He spoke about the Brian Robson testimonial, things like that. And I always thought to myself, it would be interesting to hear his affinity with Celtic and where it started, and why he is really a Man United fan with an affection for Celtic. The show is called Naked Confessions of a Recovering Catholic. So he's on for another couple of nights. Go and check him out. But he does speak very fondly of Celtic, and he has been promised, because he's never been to Celtic Park, he has been promised that we'll obviously get him up to a game and all that kind of stuff. But yes, tune into it. This is Acsom is all about speaking to anyone with a Celtic state of mind. This is what brought JP and I together. This was the whole, genesis of this channel. I used to just interview people, JP, who had a Celtic state of mind. They could have been working at King Touch like yourself. They could have been an actor or a musician. And that's what we did, and it grew. And then obviously during COVID and the lockdown, to build that community of the live streams. And now we've kind of taken a wee step back to the roots, and we're filming the interviews. So last week it was Rudy Vata, for example. This week it's Terry Christian. Next week it's Bernard Ponsonby. And it's all about having that wide range and variety.
Anyway, he will be brilliant.
I'll tell you that right now. Yep. I've heard a couple of people telling me that he's done some kind of live event speaking, public speaking on Celtic, maybe charity events, and he's been outstanding.
Tommy Burns, he spoke about Tommy Burns at the Tommy Burns supper that we had at Celtic Park, which is kind of like half Glasgow Celtic Mafia and half our supporters club that used to put on the Tommy Burns supper in Edinburgh. And Bernard Ponsonby's speech and how he spoke about Celtic and Tommy, and it was just, there was absolute silence in the room, utter respect. And maybe from people who didn't know who he was, there's probably a lot of people in the room who didn't know who he was. The only reason I knew who he was because, I don't know, being a wee guy and seeing him in the news, I had no idea he was a Celtic fan, or certainly as passionate a Celtic fan as he is. So that will be really good. But it'll be hard to top Terry Christian yesterday, for me anyway, just as a moment. And then it was really nice of him to invite us to his show, and we got to find out even more about him that we didn't get to know in the hour or so that we spoke to him.
I know, and you learn a lot more about the Saints. My knowledge of the Saints that he was talking about was not as great as it should have been. Obviously,
Gail Sheridan was on the money with all of them, though, pretty much.
She was very good. She was very good with the Saints. But that is what this is Acsom's all about. One week you might have a musician, the next week you might have Terry Christian. We have got some big names lined up, and we've got ex-players. I don't mind. In fact, I really enjoy, and I did this when I did the Quality Street Gang book, I really enjoy people sometimes who were on the fringes of a Celtic side, JP, right? Often guys that maybe came through and played 20, 30 games, and nobody interviews them about their time at Celtic, but they might have spent 10 years at the club and they've got some great experiences and memories. So it could be someone who's played 6 games or 600 games. We're going to interview them, and it's going to be on the show every Friday night, and I really, really enjoyed it. And it was great for you to make your debut appearance on the show as well, JP. I really enjoyed the entire day, actually. And as you say, there was a wee bit X-rated stuff that had nothing to do with us, but we can't talk about it before the watershed. David Boyle, I really hope we can get, is it Engel? How do you pronounce it, JP? I want to get this right. Because I pronounced Kuhn's name wrong.
Yes, Engel. Just
Engel?
Because, yeah.
We'll go Engel.
Hard G, because is he German or is he Belgian? What's his nationality?
He's Belgian.
He's Belgian.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd say Engel. Or Engel. Has he got an S at the end of it? Engels.
It has, aye. Come on, David. Engels. There we go. Versatile and the type of player we need to move forward. I've seen the reports yesterday starting to circulate around Arne Engels, Belgian 20-year-old, currently with FC Augsburg. And people instantly, when they look at this type of player, this central midfield player, are looking at him thinking, oh, well, that's a replacement for Matt O'Reilly. But you and I had a toasty, rock and roll. We had a toasty before the gig last night, JP, and we spoke about Matt and our thoughts about Matt O'Reilly. And we even floated between the two of us the incredible result that would be him staying at Celtic, because he's that type of guy who will only move if the move is right for him. So we need to have a contingency plan, and I'm glad that we're being linked with players. But at the same time, what is your thought process around the probability or the likelihood that Matt O'Reilly will still be a Celtic player come February?
Excitement.
September.
Right.
Pushing my life away here.
I would absolutely love it if Matt O'Reilly was lining up against Rangers at Celtic Park. on the first. Would absolutely love it, just because it would. Obviously, you're looking at the pots now of the Champions League draw, and you're looking at, well, I think we're likely to be in pot 3, or have we been confirmed as pot 3? Is it still speculation, or is this an actual?
I've seen an update yesterday. There's a couple of really good accounts on X who are always ahead of the curve on this, JP. But obviously, we were in Edinburgh all day, so I would need to double check to confirm.
Well, I mean, the chat is that we're going to be pot 3. So you look at the teams in pot 2 and pot 4. Try and push pot 1 to one side at the moment, because that's a little bit scary, as it always is when you look at the sheer power of the teams in that first pot. But pot 4 and pot 2 aren't as sort of daunting, I would say, is the word, as pot 1. And you do look at pot 4 in particular and say, well, if we're ever going to get 6 points from 2 games, it would be from the games from the clubs in pot 4. In theory, that doesn't always work, and there's always a kind of a trick in the tail. But I think to have any chance of doing anything in those games, to have someone who's clearly a highly rated player who's been linked with, and who Celtic, we now know Celtic's valuation of him is £25 million. So we don't have £25 million players in our team that often. So to lose someone who's of that value ahead of a Champions League campaign would be a huge blow. So if he's lining up in a Celtic jersey on the 1st of September, then I mean it'd be tremendous. As well as the fact we've now got Idah back, which brings a new dimension to the team, and it just you know what this team on song can do, and Matt Riley is a huge integral part of that. You know, his contribution last season cannot be understated, and I would be certain that if he is at Celtic this season and he doesn't get the move that he wants, if he didn't get the move that he wants to the right club, he would be setting his targets to beat last season's targets, to get 2 Champions League man of the matches, not just 1. You know, all these things will. You're a professional football player. You're going to have targets. You're going to have goals. You either set them personally, or you'll set them with the manager or the coaching staff or whatever. And that can only benefit us if he's aiming to beat last season's. Because obviously, if he beats last season's, say he stays and he gets 22 goals and 20 assists, what is his value then? And then whatever he does, however he performs in the Champions League, what is his value then when suddenly he's doing it? Because he did it. He did the business for us last season against Atletico Madrid. He was brilliant. Yeah. He didn't get the opportunity to be the same player in the away fixture because of the early red card. But we know what he can do, and he just, like I said before, he's a diamond, and they don't come along that often. So you want to hold on to a diamond as long as you can.
You can hold on to him, I think, because of the makeup of the player, JP. And I'm not going to pretend that I know him, but what I'm basing it on is some of the decisions that he's made in his football career that are well documented. And Peter Grant's spoken about them, Matt O'Reilly's spoken about them. And I think that he does realise it's not as though this season, you know, is going to be last chance saloon for him. He's got time on his side. He's got a Champions League campaign with a new structure within the Champions League, which guarantees Celtic a certain amount of games whereby, as you say, you can really put yourself, if you want to, in a short window whereby the clubs that maybe he sees himself being part of would be interested. Maybe he doesn't want to have a stepping stone move, you know. And by the way, I'm not for a moment saying Atalanta's not a good move, but it might not be the right move for him. It might not be the right move for Matt O'Reilly. And I think that even if, for example, they were to meet Celtic's demands in terms of our valuation, JP, I don't think it's a given. Because of the type of person that Matt O'Reilly is, I don't think it's a given. There's going to be a lot, and there's a lot of names at the moment being linked to Celtic, and there's some great comments coming through. So let's have a look at some of the thoughts. Jungle Line is in. Isn't it mad? The narrative has flip-flopped with tickets now. Flip-flop. Yeah, well done. Celtic are the villains when in reality those shiver of Can't say that before the watershed, but we get your gist. Started it all. And that's what we're talking about. And I think often what happens is if a narrative is skewed and enough people say it, unless platforms like this stand up and say, well, actually, this was the root of the issue, because Celtic are not in the habit of coming out and making statements willy-nilly. But obviously Celtic fans know the truth. And a lot of the media are nodding dogs when it comes to the story. Celtic did not create this. We reacted to it. And we need to make sure our fans, let's remember, we need to make sure our fans are safe. JP, when Celtic made the decision in relation to refusing, remember we refused the reduced allocation, what they've done, just to give everybody an understanding, and this isn't because of any kind of special treatment, but what they did is Celtic Football Club have got a mailing list of platforms, fan media platforms like Acsom and many others. And we have access, for example, today we have access to the Adam Idah press conference. And we have it's normally about 15, 20-minute process after the main press conference where we get an opportunity to ask a couple of questions to a new arrival. Then we get sent the video and stuff. So that is generally what happens, and we get the pre-match and the post-match, etc. But now and again, if there's a big story and they want to make sure that the story is accurate, they will contact us directly. And they did that when we decided not to take the Ibrox allocation. And they gave us the exact reason for it. And it was down to safety, because they did not feel that Rangers could guarantee the safety of Celtic fans within that environment, and the fan experience. That was the two reasons, JP. The fan experience of being in an area where there's no netting to protect you from missiles, for example, that obviously have been thrown, not just at fans, but also at staff and at players. That was the reason why. And we can't forget that was the reason why Celtic refused the reduced allocation, JP. It was a safety issue. You could go to a game and be hit with a half bottle of bucky, which can cause quite a bit of damage. And Celtic decided to protect the fans. And that is why, even though Ridiculizer doesn't agree particularly with my explanation and my description of it being spot on, I think safety is paramount. And that was the reason we did not take our allocation for Ibrox. And we need to keep going back to that.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously been there, saw a Rangers official picking up coins off the pitch as we waited to leave after the game. Numerous coins, and obviously other things have been thrown at. Now, let's not get all holier than thou. We have within our support a fan or fans who have thrown stuff as well. I think there was a cup of whatever thrown, whatever else has been thrown. Whether it was I think it was a weed grinder or something was thrown.
That's right.
Which I completely condemn. I don't like the idea of us throwing anything onto the pitch at any game, just because you end up being tarred with the same brush. And but unfortunately for them, there's been a lot of instances whereby broken glass on the pitch, a physio needing, physio being scarred for life as a result of glass being thrown. So there's many instances. So I'd never experienced the lowered allocation at Ibrox. I have friends who have, and they said that it's not that pleasant an experience. It might be pleasant if you score a goal or win or whatever, but that kind of foreboding threat of violence and potential damage to your person isn't really the way you want to be watching a football match in 2024. So if Celtic have taken measures to reduce that risk, then yeah, fair play. And then I guess we'll just revisit it at a time when their ground is habitable again.
Habitable is the word, isn't it? As I say, there was an apocalyptic feel to that video that I seen with the dusty Rangers crest. And I think, again, loads of comments coming through. Agree and disagree. It's not just an echo chamber. Let us know your thoughts. We've got Class 1978. Great to see you. You're commenting on the YouTube channel. Arnie Engels has told friends he wants to move to Celtic, 7 to 12 million. If Matt goes, and that's from Corby, big Celtic contingent down there. Stephen Craig, great to see you on the show, Stephen. If Celtic go for McCowan, and I'm glad you brought this up, should we send Odin home the other way to get him regular first team football at least until January. two things from Stephen's point here that I want to discuss, JP. The first one is McKeown. The second one is loaning players out. So this week we announced that Hibs had obviously taken on Kwon. I think he was the 9th signing of the pre-season. And that goes back to something that Brendan said quite early in the window, where he said, listen, I could go and sign 9 players on day one of the trial. It's not about getting players in, it's about getting the right players in. And Hibs have taken Kwon. We spoke about it, didn't we, a fortnight ago, regarding that kind of fringe player. Who were we talking about? Odenholm, Kwon, was it Yang?
Yep.
Yang.
That was the 3, yeah.
Yep. And I kind of looked at Kwon and I thought, right, he was one of the players we handed a 5-year deal to, right, when we signed him. So if you were to loan him out for 2 years as development, I get it. If you think this player does have the rough attributes to be a Celtic player, you can loan him out for 2 years and then hopefully he can progress in that respect. I've not seen anything, I've got to admit. I haven't seen enough to suggest he will break into the Celtic side. But these loan deals, JP, can work wonders for players. He might go out there. I know he only played 9 games for St Mirren, but he was very impressive during his spell in Paisley last season. If he does that again in Leith, you never know. He might come back. I don't want to write anybody off unless they've been here for 4 or 5 seasons, like some of the guys who should be leaving Celtic. What's your thoughts on Kwon before we move on to Odenholm and Luke McKeown?
I mean, I was never that convinced. I mean, I don't think anybody was after Kwon's debut. I remember at Celtic Park, it was in a friendly, I think.
That was James's Forest's testimonial game. Yeah.
It was friendly, sort of. And then the fact that we sent him out on loan, yeah, obviously I heard from friends who are St Mirren fans saying that it was good for them. But there's a difference between being good for St Mirren and good for Celtic. The fact that he's going to a Hibs team who I watched on Sunday and genuinely thought, wow, there's a lot of work needs done here in terms of getting this team to become a team, because the defence didn't look too clever. They've got a guy in David Gray who's obviously a club legend and everything else, but it could go one of 2 ways for him. You know, it could be in a couple of months, thanks for your services, we wish you all the best, and then enter Malky Mackay probably, or he could manage to turn it around. I kind of, even though I don't have any skin in that game, I kind of really hope that he does turn it around, because I mean, Hibs are an absolute basket case. As you've said, like 10 managers in 10 years. However, weirdly, in those 10 years, I hadn't seen a Celtic victory at Easter Road since January 2014, when we were wearing the yellow away version of that strip. And I've been back to Easter Road 4 or 5 times since then. I mean, obviously it's quite a hard place to get a ticket, even harder now that they've reduced the allocation. But yeah, we won 4-0 in January 2014. That was the last time that I saw us win there. So it kind of just goes to show how tough a place Easter Road's been, despite their managerial troubles. Obviously, I'm aware they were in the first division or the championship for a couple of seasons. Was it 2 seasons they were down?
Did they bounce back up?
I don't think
that, actually.
they come back straight away. Anyway,
because it was Lenny that got them promoted, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
But
there must have been 2.
Kwon might be walking into the wrong film there. You know, I think St Mirren were and are a unit, as you've seen. They took care of Hibs handily in the first day of the season.
Yeah,
they've performed well in Europe, albeit at a lower level, but it's pretty good for St Mirren. I think they're playing tonight, and they've got it was a draw in the first leg of the first game.
Mm-hmm.
So they could be entering into group stage European football. Hibs are a world away from that, and their team's a world away from that. So I don't know if it is the best environment for Kwon to go into. It will depend on what David Gray can get out of them within the next couple of months. But they're coming to Celtic Park on Sunday. Not an ideal game to come to. I'm sure they would have loved something a little bit easier than that, because I mean, we took them apart in the first half. Second half, okay, we didn't really go for it, and the substitutions with a drop off in experience and quality shows in that Celtic side. When you take a Hatate out, or or a Kyogo out. There isn't. Well, thankfully we've now addressed that with the Idah signing. But it was nervy on Sunday when Kyogo was down with the arm injury and he's just sitting there motionless, and you're kind of going, is that broken? Because it was right in front of me, and I was like, he's holding his arm, but he wasn't moving it. And then the physio comes over, and he eventually goes off. So that's a concern. But yeah, I mean, obviously, I want the guy to do well, even though I've barely seen him in a Celtic jersey. But at this moment in time, you start to ask the question: is this for Celtic's benefit or for Kwon's benefit? Because do Celtic want to be seen as a club that can bring a player over, and while they might not play for Celtic, we can get them opportunities with other sides in Scotland to develop them, to then potentially, I mean, then like at the end of this season, if Kwon's done well, would we consider then just selling him to Hibs, or would we sell him to, if he's played well and built his profile up, would we then just consider selling him to an English club or something like that? And then Celtic have had no direct benefit other than financial from the players signing. Is that part of a model that exists within Celtic? I don't know.
One thing that was telling from that meeting, the minutes from the meeting that were discarded in a bin and obviously very quickly became viral, was the fact that sometimes we do sell, bring in players, JP, often without any real thought process in terms of them becoming first team players. It's weird, like it's almost like you're trading in registrations just to keep the churn rate of your staff. And I look at a player like Kwon, who by the time he's been at Celtic Football Club for 2 years, he will not have kicked a competitive ball for Celtic. He'll have played 9 games for St Mirren, and he would have played a few friendlies here and there for Celtic, and then a season at Hibs. And then you're looking at what have we done in relation to bringing over for example, Yang and Kwon, and how successful has that process been, and how much has it cost the club? I think we've done pretty well with O's transfer fee. I don't think Yang or Kwon at this moment in time would make us the money back, never mind the profit. And then at that point, do we just move ourselves out of that market because we think we tried it didn't work? Because obviously, I'm all for tapping into markets all over the globe. If there's a player who can adapt to the Scottish game, obviously, but fit into Brendan Rodgers' system, I don't just want us to have that focus on the English market, because that's Brendan's market. That's what he knows. So I'm not, I'm not against bringing players in from all over. But when you bring in 3 South Koreans and none of them really make a mark, I think it might put us off going back for any more.
Potentially, but then is it also trying to open a door to create a pathway that if someone does become available from that part of the world who is a nailed on, i.e. a Kyogo or an Adam Idah or something like that, where it's like, we pay 4 or 5 million for this guy who's going to come in and be a first team starter, and have these signings from South Korea, have they laid the sort of foundations for us to be able to do that at some point, if that happens, either through relationships with clubs out there or agents out there or whoever, like, so that they can then feed back to X player, by the way, you should go to Celtic because you'll get this, that, and the next thing, you'll be looked after. It didn't work out for me, but they found me a loan club, and it built me up and got me a move to the English Championship or something, and now I'm a regular for West Brom or something like that as a result of my move to Celtic. But you've got the chops to go there and be a first team player. So is that what it is? I don't know. Is that what exploring other markets as Celtic is all about?
I would like to think there was a strategy in it, because otherwise we might end up with O's away, Kwon's out on loan, and I'm still on the fence about Yang. We spoke about him and Home, who was the other player that Stephen mentioned earlier. And to be honest with you, there's also that argument to say that some of these guys are blocking the pathway for some of the younger players to come in. Now, I want to talk about Luke McCowan, and I want to talk about that pathway. Luke McCowan is a very, very good player in the Premiership. I think, eventually, if he hasn't already, Docherty will probably get a move, right, to a club, because Dundee, no disrespect to Dundee, right, but maybe this is a bias based on me growing up, JP, and the teams who were strong when I grew up. and then the fan base and the history, and you've got Celtic, you've got Rangers, Aberdeen, Dundee United, Hibs and Hearts. For me, that's your biggest 6 clubs. And then you've got clubs who do really well season in. They're never going to have a massive upsurge in terms of their fan base. And that kind of group of teams are like Kilmarnock, Motherwell, St Johnstone for me. And then you've got teams who have been in the league for quite a while, but if they were to drop out the league, we might not see them for a while, like Livingston and Inverness. Inverness, shocking. They are just free falling at the moment. And I think Ross County are a wee bit like that. If they were to go down, we probably wouldn't have seen them for a bit. And then you've got other clubs who I think should be in the league. But you mentioned Hibs. For me, Hibs, Hearts, Dundee United and Aberdeen should be doing a hell of a lot better. But for me, that's the kind of platform that I would see would be the next stage in Luke McCowan's career. For me. And I think, you look after the games that we played against him, and he's played really well. And Rodgers has made a point of going up to him. He does that, doesn't he? He goes up to him, he goes up to Owen Beck, and like he congratulates him.
Did it to Greg Taylor years ago. There's pictures of him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he loves that.
Kilmarnock, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So maybe Rodgers does like him. Maybe Rodgers looks at a player like him and thinks, "Oh, I can take him further still." But I looked at when we started being linked to him, and I understand why, because you play a team and he always turns up well and he's doing well, but he's linked to Hibs at the moment. Whether or not Hibs will meet Dundee's valuation, I'm not so sure. Celtic obviously could. I don't think, and I've heard that we are interested in him, I don't think that takes Celtic to the next level. I really don't, JP. And I know he's playing really, really well for Dundee at the moment. And outside of the Celtic Rangers bubble, he's maybe the best player in Scottish football in terms of form and all that. He's 26-year-old and 2 seasons ago was playing in the Championship. Can he, because it takes another big step for him to, obviously he's acclimatised to Premiership football. Can he make that step up to Celtic? I'm not sure.
Well, if he's got the trust of and the buy-in of Brendan Rodgers, then that's step one, and then it's then up to him to prove to, if he was to come through the door at Celtic, it's up to him to prove to Brendan Rodgers that he can give him what he needs. But I would say that if he was to come in, there's not really any room for him as things stand at the moment. You've got Home, you've got Bernardo, you've got Iwata.
Yeah.
I mean, Iwata's been hardly mentioned at all, really, and even in pre-season and in the build-up to this season, everyone's just focusing on that middle three of Hatate, McGregor, O'Reilly. I don't think Hatate was in any way great at Easter Road. I was screaming at him so many times. Like, I just don't know how he didn't have the awareness that there was a player near him. He gets the ball, he has that kind of like, squares out his chest and then has a look around, and you're like, right, you've already used up 2 of your 5 seconds that you've got on the ball in this game. You didn't get 20 seconds to sort of preen yourself and wait for a pass. You need to get it off quick. That's the difference between Matt O'Reilly and him. Matt O'Reilly's like a snooker player. He's already thinking of the third, the third and fourth pass, never mind the first one. So
good analogy, that. Yeah.
And I actually said that beforehand. We were talking, me and Melly were talking about Hatate, and I said there's a reason why he's not getting linked with these big money moves. Maybe there's been a couple of late, but he's got a lot to do to get to that level. He's not had a Matt O'Reilly season. He's not had a 19 goals and 18 assists or whatever the final figures were for Matt O'Reilly. And I would hope that he sees that as his challenge this season to put those sort of numbers in, Hatate. And then if he really does want to move, then he'll get his move based on the back of a season like that. But McCowan, I don't see, there's obviously good for the Scottish quota and everything else, but you don't want to be signing players based solely on that. I'd like to think that, and as well as that, as the age-old thing, user just signed him, to quell the challenge of Dundee when you play them or whatever. And as we used to be accused of when we signed Didier Agat, even though Didier Agat actually became a first team player and played Champions League football for us and wasn't just kicking his heels on the bench. But there's many examples of us picking up really good players from other sides who are standouts in that side, and then they've not done the business for us. Now that's a mixture of the player and the club, because I'm sorry, but Derek Riordan didn't cover himself in glory, I don't think, at Celtic, with his attitude and everything else. And there's a reason why his career was cut short, and it wasn't Celtic. It was the player himself. I'm sure if Derek Riordan had applied himself in the way that other players have when they've gone to Celtic, then he may have ended up being a first-team player and breaking records and all the rest of it, as he was supposed to be the best finisher.
Yeah.
At the club.
And he became only an excuse sketch. That's what he became. You know,
Yeah.
By the way, I think it's a good example. I'll remember around about that time the question being asked of who was it that was being interviewed now? And Stephen McManus it was, because he was a captain at the time. And he was asked the question in a press conference about the fact that Strachan wasn't using Derek Riordan. And he came out and said exactly what you said there. He gets a chance every single day at training.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not taking a chance. And he was quite brutal. I remember that press conference in relation to Riordan. Other players who I think looked the part when they were at another club in Scotland have come to Celtic and failed to set the heather alight, to use an old Scottish term. I think Scott Allan. I remember watching Scott Allan playing for Hibs against Rangers, and he orchestrated the entire game. You know, he was brilliant in the midfield. Comes to Celtic, there's nothing. Ulrich Lawson, a wee bit earlier, David Hanna, a decent player for Dundee United. He comes to Celtic, doesn't really do anything. And there's been loads and loads of others. I mean, I don't quite think David Turnbull's in that bracket as such, but would McKeown be better than Turnbull? I don't know. It's a good debate to have. I just don't think that we're the next step in his progression. I think Hibs are, if Hibs are able to pay the money, and I don't think it's going to improve Celtic's squad. But also, it's going to block, for me, the pathway of a younger player coming through, if indeed we have any aspirations for doing that these days, JP. And I have my doubts, because, when we lost Rocco Vata, there's the klaxon, and there's loads and loads of discussions around what we're doing wrong, what can we do better, how can we, bring the players through so that they actually stay at Celtic. And I kept going back to, if a player's in his last year of his contract, we've had it. Because there is a club somewhere out there who undoubtedly will offer them more money. And I thought to myself, we've lost loads of talent over the years. And I thought, I'll make a wee list of the players that have gone, and we'll see what they've done. Now, none of these guys are, at a point where they can't still make it and smash it and all these other terms. So here's a few players that we've lost in the last few seasons. Leo Hjeld, 20 years of age. He went to Leeds United. He's now at Sunderland. Conor McBride, 23, went to Blackburn, now with Rochdale. Barry Hepburn, 20 years of age, went to Bayern Munich, still there. Liam Morrison, 21, Bayern Munich, now at Queen's Park Rangers. Ben Doak, 18, Liverpool, they're looking to offload him. Liam Hughes, 22, Liverpool, he's now at Haka. Karamoka Dembele, 21, still at Brest, but obviously signed for QPR on loan. Vincent Angelini, 20, Watford, now a free agent. Cameron Harper, 22, New York Red Bulls. Rocco Vata, 19, Watford. Armstrong Okoflex, 22, West Ham. Blossom Lawal, 21, Stoke. Daniel Kelly, 18, Millwall. So you look at that and you go, right. So when they left, we're like, these great young players are leaving Celtic. Which one of them's done anything? Really? And I'm not writing them off, because they're all still young.
Bad bit for Celtic's youth academy, is it? Because if all these guys were doing the business at a really good level, then you're like, well, we've obviously got a youth academy, but we're not giving the players the opportunity at Celtic. But these guys are going away and proving that they're not playing at a level above Celtic or even close to it. But the Thiago Home thing, it's a big season for him. I mean, if he doesn't really make a mark this season, does he have a future at Celtic? I mean, it's going to be really tough for him if Mattarelli does stay, and obviously we all hope he does. Then that is another blocking of a pathway for Thiago Home, because he's not going to get anywhere near that midfield. He got on Sunday, I see that. He might even play on this Sunday. I don't know how Rodgers will view the League Cup and how if he will make any changes, if any, at this stage. In the past, we've always, an early League Cup game has seen a lot of changes in the side. I wonder if that will be the case, or if he will give Hibs the respect that they possibly deserve as a club from the same league as us. It's not like we're playing a first division team or something like that, where you would then expect changes to happen. But I guess we'll wait and see what he comes up with on Sunday in terms of the team sheet. But I find it very difficult to see Thiago Home playing a lot of minutes this season, just like we spoke about a couple of weeks ago. You said Kwon would be 0, and you're going to be right with that because he's away. And then Yang is the other one. And I still have huge question marks over Yang as being someone that I would hang my hat on in a game when we really need the business to be done. Are you counting on Yang to be that guy? I'm certainly in the same argument. Nicholas Kuhn has now become a person who you can hang your hat on, and we're seeing that playing out in front of us with him opening the scoring, Ange ball style, left winger to the right winger and finishing it. So Nicholas Kuhn is making that right winger jersey his own. And then, time will tell what will happen when everyone's fit on the left. You've got James Forrest, you've got Adam Idah, and you've got Lewis Palmer, who still don't quite know why Lewis Palmer wasn't in the squad on Sunday. I was looking for him to redeem himself at Easter Road for his Easter Road performance last season wasn't great, put it that way. It was
worrying. It was worrying.
It wasn't great. But I don't know where he was. Was he given time off or something like that? Have you heard that?
Rodgers actually said that he took a really dull challenge against Kilmarnock and it put him out for between 10 and 14 days.
Okay.
So he did speak about that. He rolled his ankle, so probably swelling and everything else. But I think you're right about the winger situation, JP, this season. Celtic have got this tradition whereby the wingers create goals, right? We've got other players in the team who can do it. Rio Atati on form can do it. Matt O'Reilly's brilliant. You've looked at that with his assists. Greg Taylor's got loads of assists under his belt. But in terms of historically and the team that we've got now, you're looking at your wingers to be creative forces. Everything started off really well this season, but let's not forget, at some point in this campaign, it would be very unlikely that we won't come up against a team at home and it becomes really frustrating, JP, and they're just blocking every single opportunity. And you're looking at that point for your wingers to dig deep. You really are. And it's that kind of part of the game that I think makes or breaks you as a Celtic winger. James Forrest has got it. You think of the moments where one of our wingers has got us out of jail. Forrest has done it so many times. Maeda's done it. Jota did it. And you think, when's Yang done that? When's Palmer done that? And I think that's the bit. Kuhn, started the season off really, really well. But I want to see us when we're really up against it and it's nothing each or we're a goal down or one each and it's getting into that stage of the game, JP, where you're thinking we could play all day and not score. Like that Easter Road game you mentioned there, where we were wearing our black kits, nothing each, could have played all day. That's when you want your wingers to really dig deep. And I think Jota very quickly learned that as a Celtic player. It wasn't just about the flair and all that kind of side of the game, which is great, and we love that. We want to be entertained. But it's in these tough games where you really need to pull something. You need to pull a rabbit out of the hat. And I think that's the test for Yang. It's a test for Palmer. And a wee bit to a degree, Kuhn. I want to see him doing it in a big game, where it's maybe nothing each and tight, and he's the guy that creates or even scores out of nothing. So, by the way,
do you think we'll sign another winger before the end of the window?
At the beginning of the window, that was on my list, but I don't think it's as much of a priority now. And a big part of that's probably Kuhn's form. And Robbie comes in and says, "Look, centre half, we need that for Europe." Absolutely, my priorities are definitely the left side of centre back and left back. Midfield all depends on what happens in terms of the exit door, of course. We're running with 2 strikers. Do we need a third? And what type of striker would we bring in? It's probably going to be a development player, a project, because it's going to be a third choice. So the winger for me becomes less of a priority because, as you say, you've got Maeda and Palmer, you've got Kuhn and Forrest, and you've also got Yang. So we've got 5 wingers there. If, for example, Yang was to go out and loan a wee bit like Kwon, then you would think maybe just for cover we would bring another one in. Is there somebody ready to step up? Because I've just said there's a list of, I think, 12 or 13 young guys who have left. How many of them would get in the Celtic first team right now? How many of them? And you think to yourself, early 20s, most of them now, 21, 22. And the fact that they left and haven't played a lot of football, like the likes of Barry Hepburn, Liam Morrison at Bayern Munich, might have stumped their development. But do we have another wave of talent coming through? I'm not so sure we do. Studs Lanigan, I'm glad you brought up that Gangad title party in 2001. I've got the video up there somewhere. I've got the video of that title party. Somebody burnt the videos up and put them out there. Brown Warrior, we replaced a 400 grand signing from Mariners and Rogic for 1.5 million with O'Reilly even. And we've brought in a 3.5 million pound signing for Benfica to replace him. That's an upgrade in terms of spending. We need to wait and see if it's going to be an upgrade in terms of quality. We'll finish it off, JP. We'll finish it off by talking about Adam Idah.
I was going to say, how mad is it? How mad is it we've not spoken about? It's just because it's been like this almost certain thing to happen throughout the summer, and yet it was 2 months ago that we were talking about. You said, "Would you pay 8 million for Adam Idah?" And I said, "Yeah," and I gave my reasons.
Yep.
But I hope one of the questions that's asked in that presser today is, "Why is this taking so long?"
Oh.
I don't know if you'll be able to give the full detail as to why it has taken so long, but I mean, who has dragged this out? He said from the second or third day of him being a loan player at Celtic in January, February, he wanted to sign for Celtic. So if he's wanted that since then, how has his agent and both the clubs not managed to get that done until now? He's missed the whole pre-season in America. He could have been out there having a great time, bonding further with the team, getting to know Kasper Schmeichel, even though they don't play close to each other in the park. But there's all of that kind of thing, and it just seems mad that it's taken this long. But and then I know people are getting their knickers in a twist a little bit about the fee and saying we've been done and all the rest of it. But as another, I know I seem to be some sort of cheerleader for Graham McGarry and talking about his articles, but if you read the article that Graham McGarry wrote yesterday, I mean, if you add, I think, Killio, and I forget the other third signing that he knocked in there, but it was like basically the money that we paid for them is the same price as what we paid for Adam Idah, and you're buying a guy that you know has done the business in this league, you know has got room for potential for the development, and the fact that he wants to be here, and hearing that he wanted to be here and wanted to become a Celtic player as a loan signing, I mean, that appetite could earn you a 3 points in a game where it's looking like a point, because he's got that bit of hunger to get on the end of a pass or get on the end of a header. He'll leap a bit higher because he wants to be here. Do you know, he's not just coming here to be a black Irishman playing for Celtic. You know, it's quite symbolic. It's on all fronts. If you actually take away from the footballing aspect of it, it's quite significant. So, I'm absolutely delighted that he's signed. And the money, it's a lot of money, but I mean, it's kind of like the going rate. And people talk that some of the signings that fly around in England, that like 30, 40 million signings that are now just 10 a penny, and
normalised,
and nobody raises an eyelid, and it's because it's come to Celtic and everyone's sort of going, oh, what? I mean, Rangers or previous Rangers still hold the record for the most expensive signing in Scottish football history. I mean, we know how that played out for them ultimately, but I mean, I don't particularly care. I've said before, I want to see the little money that I put into Celtic be spent in the right way. This to me is spending it in the right way. It's not a Hail Mary. It's a certainty that guy's going to score goals this season for us. There's absolutely no doubt about it. Potentially starting on Sunday.
A Hail Mary. That's you talking about Terry Christian yesterday about Catholicism. But the thing with Idah, I'm going to go back actually, and it's not a Nostradamus moment, but we went 2 months ago. I asked you the question, would you go to 8? Simple question. You said yes. Loads of people in the comments said no, right? Fair enough. That's what it's all about. But you said on the proviso, you said that he is the man Brendan Rodgers wants, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that to a degree is one of the reasons why it's taken so long, because he's been like, no, I want him. You know, I don't really want to look at Matthias Fitzgarden or Bojan Miofsky. I want Adam Idah. And then Norwich perhaps knew that. We didn't have the loan to buy. We all know we didn't, and it's a mistake. And then obviously they have drawn it out. I think Idah played his part by agitating for a move. Let's be honest, he did. And because regardless, that was the one I wanted. Even if Norwich wanted to charge me another £2 million, that's the guy I want. And I think there's a few things we can take from that. The first one I would take from it, JP, is that Brendan Rodgers is in control of the recruitment, and that's a positive. Now, the negative to that is that
negative, because then you're like, that's not how it should be.
It shouldn't be like that. That's the thing. That is the thing. We should have multi-region recruitment all over the place, scouting going on all the time.
Yeah, who work in tandem with the manager.
Yeah,
not just presenting players that he doesn't want, i.e. Daniel Arzani or whoever it might well be.
Blast from the past, Sved, Compare, Bio. But the good thing about that, again, in terms of the price, 8.5 to 9.5. A lot of money, yeah, on paper it is. But like you said there, you could say, okay, Nawrocki, Lagerbielk and Nat Phillips, right, cost us the gutsy £9 million. Let's think about that for a minute. That's a lot of money, right? Because we paid a loan fee for Phillips for 6 months. Or you could say the likes of Tillio and Home, who haven't played much football for Celtic. Home was £2.5 million. £2.5 million. Boston Laval, we sold them for up to £3 million. So, you know what? We've done it, and I'm delighted that we've done it. And I'm looking forward, and it's Jim Orr who's going to be representing a Celtic state of mind at the press conference today. And I wouldn't be surprised if Celtic had him in their away jersey today, right? Because to be honest with you, it's always the home jersey that they put the players in, but obviously try to push it and all that. I bet he's wearing that away jersey. Looking forward to that.
Do you know what I'd be interested in seeing, and I'll actually look it up after this, is to find out if, remember the Norwich City podcast guy that I said I watched in January, spoke about Idah being linked to Verona and the fact that there was a fee agreed for $3 million, and he was kind of like, I'd be disappointed with that. I'd be looking for double that fee. So this, like, I've seen a few comments where people going, "Oh, bang average player who can't even get into a Norwich City side and all this." But there's a guy who is a massive Norwich City fan, takes his time out to do a podcast, who was saying in January that he was disappointed that they would only get $3 million for him. So I'd be interested to see. I'm sure he'll have done a video or short on the Idah transfer. So it'll be interesting to see what he thinks about how the business that they've done on that, and how they feel that transfer is from their point of view rather than ours. You know? Yeah,
it would be. And by the way, you're right. It's really interesting because we're so focused on Celtic that every club in Britain have got platforms like this. And yesterday I was asked to speak to a Millwall fan about Daniel Kelly, and to be honest with you, he was really surprised that Millwall were involved here, because some of the clubs that had been linked to the player, and they wanted to get a Celtic fan's take on Daniel Kelly. So check that one out. I shared it on the socials as well. One last thing, we are going to be live with Charlie Mulgrew next month at Gracie's in Glasgow, and it's the live debut in Scotland of Paddy Mullane, who you would have seen, I'm sure, doing the rounds. There's a video of him doing the Dying Rebel, which is incredible. He will be playing at an Acsom live event before and in the middle of the Charlie Mulgrew gig, so get along to that. The tickets have gone rapid, but the link is underneath this video, as are the links to some of this weekend's gigs that I'll be doing with Lubo and Johan Mjalby. Absolutely delighted with the turnout today, 1,400 strong. Still, at this moment in time, I'm going to have to switch this off while there's 1,400 people tuning in, JP, but I know that you've got
to work. Sorry.
You've got to work. This is it. You've got work to do. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. Tune in on Friday night for JP and I, joined by Tommy Sheridan and Terry Christian. It was a bit of a Big Brother reunion yesterday as well. Friday night at 6 o'clock. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. We'll see you again tomorrow at 12:30 on A Celtic State of Mind.